everyone! Hello Sir Ravalo. This is Rose BERMAS together with Miss CURATIVO JANICE from BS Ed 2F. Today we are gonna talk about the principles and strategies of teaching and designing IEP for learners with difficulty walking and moving. Let us first state the intended learning outcome of this chapter. Anyways, we are going to tackle about the chapter 10. So here is the intended learning outcome. The intended learning outcome of this chapter is to make an IEP that matches the educational needs of learners with difficulty walking and moving. But before we discuss about the main topic for today, let us first define the acronym IEP, which is one of the most important tools in this course. Special education. So, what is IEP? IEP stands for Individualized Education Program, which is made and designed by the teachers together with the parents and the learners through a thorough discussion. Its purpose is to state the special education and related services as well as the supplementary aids and services that the public agency will provide to or in behalf of the learner. Another purpose of this program is to establish measurable annual goals for the learners. Now let us move on to the discussion regarding the principles and strategies of teaching and designing IEP for learners with difficulty walking and moving. So in the previous lesson, the types, characteristics, and identification of learners with difficulty walking and moving were discussed by other reporters, where we have distinguished the different walking and moving impairments, which limits the learner's ability to learn effectively. Learners with difficulty walking and moving have varied educational needs, and most of these needs relate to physical access to or lack of technological aids, manipulation of equipment, classroom and school program anticipation, limited workstations, proper seating accommodations, and not meeting class schedules due to timely travel. So those are the most common difficulties that students encounter while learning, which needs to be addressed immediately so that the students won't experience a hard time coping with their situation, because those inconveniences may affect the learners through course requirements not suitable to their abilities, limited time to move between venues, tiredness from transporting to places, inaccessible facilities in comfort rooms, limited pathway space, inaccessible ramps or opportunities to interact with classmates. But the good thing is that there is a range of inclusive teaching strategies that are useful in teaching learners with difficulties, because not all learners have the same condition. It is therefore suggested that teachers must perform a confidential discussion with the learners and their parents to completely cover their educational needs. In this space, they are now going to make an IEP suitable for their learner. Some learners in the inclusive classrooms may fully access education with minimal accommodations and modifications. Okay, you might get confused of what does the inclusive classroom means. Well, inclusive classroom is simply defined as the general education classroom. It is a typical classroom where students with or without disability learn together. It is actually the opposite of special education classroom, where students with disabilities learn with only other students with disabilities. Now let's go back to accommodations and modifications. So parents and even teachers are often confused about these two terms, but the general rule is that if it helps the learner to complete the same work or the work is completed at a different level, it is a modification. For example, the learner dictates answers to multiple choice examination instead of writing it is an accommodation. But when the multiple choice items were lessened to become less complex, then it is a modification. Okay, let me give you another example regarding the classroom instruction in accommodation and modification method. So in accommodation, a student with dyslexia, for example, might listen to an audio version of the book, but it's still the same book that the rest of the class is reading. While in modification, for example, students could be assigned on a shorter or easier reading assignments or homework that's different from the rest of the class. In short, accommodation can help the learners learn from the same materials as their peers or as their classmates. This allows them to meet the same expectations, while learners who receive modifications are not expected to learn well the same material as their classmates. As they far behind their classmates, they may need to have changes in curriculum they're learning. So some learners may require simple to complex specialized instructions and related services with expanded core curriculum where physical independence, special health care routines, using assistive technologies, communication, self-awareness and social maturation, and mastery of daily living skills are taught. So the next slides are the services, modifications, and educational approaches provided to learners with difficulty walking and moving. So we have first the health professionals. Since learners with difficulty walking and moving have complex needs, their IEP team consists of varied professionals to assist them in their education and health requirements. Here are the two important IEP members for these learners, for the health professionals. The first one, we have the physical therapist, or what we call the PTs. These are licensed professionals that use treatment techniques to help promote mobility, reduce pain, restore function, and prevent further disabilities of learners with difficulty walking and moving. They evaluate and treat human body disorders. They can help learners to manage illnesses or injuries to the learner's musculoskeletal system, neurological system, cardiopulmonary, and integumentary system. Physical therapists motivate learners to be independent as possible and suggest sitting positions and classroom activities, exercises, or programs that both learners with or without disability can do. Students should at least do the common treatment for their disabilities like exercising, stretching, using hands-on techniques, and it can be also with the use of different equipments. The main goal of physical therapists is to help learners restore the functionality by improving movement and increasing motion range in specific body areas. So the second one in health professionals is occupational therapist. Those professionals determine the learner's goals in life and help them perform daily activities such as self-help, employment, recreation, communication, and aspects of daily living, like taking a bath, hygiene, and eating, to reach their goals. Occupational therapists help with barriers that affects the learner's emotional, social, and physical needs. Occupational therapists guide learners develop their motor skills through activities such as baking and typing on computer keyboards. Another thing is that occupational therapists help the learners improve their school performance and aids their daily activities. They also help the learners to boost their self-esteem and sense of accomplishment. With the help of occupational therapists, learners with difficulties in moving and walking can develop fine motor skills so they can grasp and release things and equipment and develop good handwriting and even computer skills. Other specialists that give related services to these learners include the speech pathologists or SLPs, adapted physical educators, recreation therapists, school nurses, prosthetics, orientation and mobility specialists, and also the counselors. Now, let us move on in the environmental modifications. Environmental modification. These modifications are essential in making the environment more accessible to learners with physical and health impairments. Aside from creating barrier-free buildings, which is highly suggested, the following are ways to make schools accessible to learners with physical disabilities. Number 1. Have classroom located in more accessible building levels. This is one of the very important thing because this one is very important, especially with a school campus with 2 to 3 or more story buildings. It is preferably to have the classroom for these learners on the first floor because that is safer than the 2, 3, and so on. Number 2, relocate activities to more spacious area. This one is a good avenue for students with difficulty in walking and moving, since they'll have enough space to do their thing or the activity. There is 99% possibility of not hurting each other or bumping into each other. Number 3, in grouping activities, let the abled learners move to the location of the learner with physical disabilities and make sure that they have enough space to collaborate. Yes, this is related to the pointer number 2, where students need enough space to collaborate with one another without hurting or bumping into each other. Number 4, adjust desks, chairs, and tables appropriate to the height of learners that use wheelchairs. Desks should also be prepared for left-handed learners with or without disabilities. I've heard some school with special education uses adjustable chairs and desks so that learners will learn comfortably. Number 5, provide adequate floor space for learners that use wheelchairs in the front, on the side, and on the rear of the room so they can park without blocking the flow of traffic. This is also applicable to classes in laboratory settings where setting up special workstations is recommended. Well, I think a classroom for students with walking and moving disabilities really requires a spacious room and spacious area for the learners, especially for those who are using wheelchairs. Number 6, modify response requirements by allowing spoken instead of written ones, or vice versa. So, since we are talking about the students with difficulty in walking and moving, this method is preferable since there are students who has a difficulty writing and even holding a pen. Last, provide a resource room where learners with physical disabilities can go when needed during the school day to work with their school requirements or with the members of their IEP. I think a teacher's separated room will be enough. It can be used as a resource room as long as it is big, a spacious area with tools and equipment which can be used like chairs, tables, a vacant area, and the likes. So I hope that you learned from my discussion. That is the end of it, but the report isn't done yet. Let us listen to Miss Curativo Janice for the continuation of our discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Good day, everyone. I am Janice F. Curativo. I am the reporter who will continue the discussion about principles and strategies of teaching and designing IEP for learners with difficulty walking and moving. Let's begin to the assistive technology. These are both devices, low-tech and high-tech, and services that are used to develop, increase, and maintain mobility and daily performance of learners with physical disabilities. Pag sinabing assistive technology, ito ay mga pantulong na teknolohiya na kadalasan ginagamit upang ilarawan ang mga produkto o system na sumusuporta at tumutulong sa mga individual na may mga kapansanan, restricted mobility o kanilang kapansanan upang maisagawa ang mga function na maaring mahirap o imposible. So, ano nga ba ang low and high-tech na tinatawag? Ang low-tech ay bagong teknolohiya na idinisenyo upang maging kasing simple hanggat maaari. Ito rin ay maaring lumang teknolohiya na hindi napapahanahon, in short, cheap. While the high-tech naman, para sa mga medyo bagong teknolohiya na pinagsama-sama ang mga advanced na feature, ito yung mga expensive devices. Here are the examples. Mobility and communication. Let us discuss the first one is the mobility. Varies with each person, some can access their devices easily while others cannot. In short, mobility is the ability to move or be moved freely and easily. Here are the examples of assistive technologies that help students or learners with limited mobility are mouth stick and head-on. Let us discuss first the mouth stick. This is a device manipulated with mouth that allows users to control and walk. Ang tanong, paano nga ba gumagana ang mouth stick? Ang paggamit ng isang mouth stick o pointer, ang gumagamit nito ay gumagawa ng mga paggalaw ng ulo upang ilipat ang device sa nais na lokasyon sa isang touchscreen, keyboard o libro upang makuha ang nais nito. So ano nga bang gamit ng mouth stick sa may kapansanan? Ang mouth stick daw ay isang aparato o idinisenyo para sa mga taong hindi makontrol ang paggalaw ng kamay o panginginig dahil sa cerebral palsy at para sa mga hindi maigalaw ang kanila mga kamay. Gamit nito, maaari silang magsagawa ng mga aktibidad tulad ng pag-type, pagpindot, paglipat ng mga pahina o di kaya kahit pag-ulit. The second example in mobility is the head one. This is the device similar to mouth stick, except that the head manipulates it. Other mobility aids include scooters, walkers, canes, scratches, and orthoric devices. Ito daw ay isang mahusay na kagamitan sa teknolohiyang pantulong para sa mga taong limitado sa paggalaw ng braso o kaya hindi niya maigalaw ang kanyang mga kamay. Let's move on to the next. Communication. There are aids used to communicate whether in person or online. To further information, communication is so important, being able to communicate effectively, and perhaps the most important of life skills. So, it is important to always address a student with a disability directly. Examples are speech recognition software. This is software that creates text and navigates online by voice commands, usually used by learners with limited mobility. Ito ay isang speech text na may kakayahang tukuyin ang mga salitang binibigits ng malakas at ikino-convert ito sa nababasang teksto. Ginagamit ang software na ito upang matukoy ang mga salita sa pasalitang wika. Ang speech-generating device naman, this is stand-alone device or software that is installed in tablets or phones where users are not able to speak on their own can communicate to others. Ano nga ba ang isang halimbawa ng SGD? Ito ay isang handful electronic device na magbe-play ng mga pre-record ng mga salita kapag hinawakan na ginagamit ang switch o pinindot ang mga button o key. Kasama na rin sa mga ito ang mga tablet, laptop, o iba pang karaniwang device na may mga application o function na bububuo ng mga salita. Let's proceed to the next broad topic about inclusive classroom approaches. In the PPT, some learners with severe impairments are attended in homebound or hospital education programs, regarded as most restrictive placements, while others are in special classes with smaller class sizes, more adapted equipment, and easy access to professional services. The less restrictive environment where there is more interaction to learners without disabilities is the regular classroom. Ano ba yung inclusive? Sa pagkakaalam ko, ito yung covered lahat ang services, the facilities, or the items which is normally expected or required. Sa madaling salita, ang ilang mga nag-aaral na may matinding kapansanan ay dinadaluhan ng homebound o sa mga programa sa edukasyon sa ospital. Ngunit itinuturong itong pinakamayigpit na placement, while the others ay sa mga espesyal na klase na may maliit na laki ng klase. Mas pinagtibay din ang kagamitan at mas madaling ma-access sa mga professional na serbisyo. Ang hindi naman gaanong maigpit ay yung nasa regular na silid-aralan. Here are the some ways in handling learners is the regular classroom. Observe the learners with physical disabilities in the classroom and ask if any assistance is needed. Offer help if needed, but don't assume that they always prefer to have other support. Kung ikaw ay isang tagapagturo, obserbahan mo ang mag-aaral na may pisikal na kapansanan sa silid-aralan at magtanong anumang tulong ang kailangan. Tandaan, mag-alok lamang daw ng tulong kung kinakailangan. Huwag ipagpalagay na palagi nilang gusto ang magkaroon ng suporta sa iba. Use accurate and sensitive terminologies in the classroom as learners with or without disabilities learn from the teacher's knowledge and attitudes. Kung ikaw ay isang tagapagturo ng mga may makapansanan, tiyakin mo lamang na gumamit ng tumpak at sensitibo sa iyong silid upang ang mag-aaral na may kapansanan o walang kapansanan ay matuto mula sa mga binahagi mong pag-uugali at kaalaman. Use simulation and role-playing activities where able to learners are given opportunities to use wheelchairs and other assistive devices to help raise awareness of some barriers their classmates are facing. Kapag isa ka sa mga tagapagturo sa mga may kapansanan, mahalagang paalala na gumamit ng simulation at role-playing na mga aktibidad kung ang may mga kakayahang bigyang pagkakataon na gumamit ng wheelchair o di kaya pantulong na kagamitan upang makatulong na mamulat o maintindihan ng bawat isa ang kinakarap ng mga estudyante. When conversing, make eye contact, smile, and make sure that your head is at or below the eye level of the learner using wheelchair. Sit or crouch near the learner but do not lean on their shoulders to avoid invading their personal space. Kung pagtutuunan mo ng pansin ng mga batang may kapansanan, kailangan kapag makikipag-usap ka ay dapat na makipag-eye contact ka at siguraduhin mo rin na ang iyong ulo ay nasa antas o mas mababa sa antas ng mata ng mag-aaral gamit ang wheelchair. Umupo ka o di kaya yumuko malapit sa mag-aaral, ngunit iwasan o huwag mong gawing sumandal sa kanilang mga balikat upang maiwasan mo ang kanilang personal na espasyo. Make sure that reasonable in between breaks are given to these learners for travel time purposes. Plan class schedules before the school years start so as to minimize travel time and distance between classes. So, siguraduhin daw na makapagplano ka ng klase bago magsimula ang taon ng pasukan upang mabawasan ang sayang ng oras o kaya mga travel time distances sa pagitan ng mga klase. Makatwiran din ang pagbibigay ng oras para sa travel time purposes only sa mga mag-aaral. Allow learners who have difficulties in writing to record class lectures or to have note takers. Create test accommodations in the form of extra time or the use of processor. Sa ganitong usapin, pahihintulitan ang mga mag-aaral na nahihirapan sa pagsulat na mag-record ng mga lectures sa klase o di kaya magkaroon ng note taker. Kung sa ganun, may kaluwagan sa pagsusulit at pagbibigay ng dagdag na oras para sa mga activity at paggamit na rin ng word processor. Involve learners with arm and dexterity problems in laboratory classes and pair them with able learners who can carry out procedures. In this way, learners with disabilities can learn and are actively involved except on physically manipulating laboratory materials. Kung ikaw ay nakatalaga sa laboratorio, isali ang mag-aaral na may mga problema sa braso o sa may mga kapansanan at ipasa ito sa mahusay na mag-aaral na maaaring magawa ang pamamaraan. Nang sa ganon, natututo sila sa aktibong makikilahok sa aktibidad maliban na lamang din sa pisikal na magpapamanipulate ng materyales sa laboratorio. Work with learners with physical and health impairments to arrange for appropriate time for completion of class assignments. Kung nais mong matuto ang mag-aaral na may mga kapansanan sa pisikal at kalusugan, makipagtulungan o tulungang ayusin ang angkop na oras para sa pagkumpleto ng mga taktang aralin sa klase. That's all for today. Thank you very much.